Hello everyone, welcome to Twilight. Problem is possibility, and this is Dr. Rajalakshmi. Today I am here to talk about ultrasonogram evaluation of diaphragmatic dysfunction. Diaphragmatic dysfunction is not an uncommon problem for all physicians, especially for the intensivist. Whenever we are dealing with any patients on invasive ventilator, it's mandatory to assess the function of diaphragm, which will help us to take a decision on initiation of the weaning and to take a decision on liberation of the patient from the ventilator. So it's a muscle which separates thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity. During inspiration, it will go down. During expiration, it will go back to its original position. What are the causes of diaphragmatic dysfunction? It can be because of CVA, hemorrhagic CVA, or thrombotic CVA, or some other problem with the brain, multiple sclerosis, some vascular anomalies, poliomyelitis, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, syringomyelia, and other problems with spinal cord, spinomuscular dystrophy, post-radiation, trauma. It can be because of compression, GPS, infection, amyotrophic neuralgia, thoracic surgeries, especially post cardiothoracic surgeries. There will be chance of cutting of phrenic nerves or some injury to the phrenic nerve. And chronic diseases, especially COPD and asthma, in such scenario there will be some degree of diaphragmatic dysfunction will be there. Myasthenia gravis at the level of the neuromuscular junction, and Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome, and botulism. Muscular dystrophy, it's because at the level of the muscle, muscular dystrophy, steroid myopathy, Pompe's disease, especially in the pediatrics, and prolonged mechanical ventilation. So these are different causes at different levels. In case of the brain, it can be because of stroke or AV malformations, multiple sclerosis. At the level of the spinal cord, many diseases are there. Among them, common to us is trauma, GBS, and some infection, post-operative, post-CT surgeries. At the level of neuromuscular junction, especially myasthenia gravis and botulism toxicity. And at the level of the lung, because of COPD and asthma. At the level of the muscle itself, steroids, muscular dystrophy, prolonged ventilation, and Pompe's disease. What are the differences between unilateral and bilateral? In terms of the history, there is no much difference. But when it comes to symptomatic, unilateral most of the times it will be mild or no symptoms. We encounter or we can diagnose unilateral diaphragmatic paralysis most of the times as an incidental finding. Bilateral, all the bilateral diaphragmatic weakness or paralysis patients are symptomatic. Symptomatic means patient can be dyspneic, orthopnea, chest discomfort will be there, hypoxia will be there. Unilateral, no paradoxical abdominal movements. Bilateral, there will be paradoxical respiratory movements will be there. In case of pulmonary functional test, restrictive pattern will be there, but in unilateral diaphragmatic paralysis, vital capacity will be more than 70%, bilateral less than 50%. In supine position, the vital capacity will come down by more than 15%. In bilateral, it is more than 30%. Maximal inspiratory pressure less than 60%, and here less than 40% drop. Fluoroscopy wise, if it is bilateral, the diagnosis will be a bit difficult. Unilateral, it's easy to diagnose with help of fluoroscopy, because in case of bilateral, it's difficult to interpret because of paradoxical movements. Transdiaphragmatic pressure, in case of unilateral, it is more than 70 centimeters of the water, bilateral less than 40. Diaphragmatic plication can be useful in unilateral, not useful in case of bilateral. In bilateral, diaphragmatic pacemaker, especially when there is spinal cord damage and no transmission of impulses from the phrenic nerve. So in such scenario, we can keep a diaphragmatic pacemaker in case of bilateral paralysis. Plication we can try in unilateral when there is paradoxical mediastinal shift and causing mediastinal compression and dyspnea. So ultrasonic evaluation, how does diaphragm looks in an ultrasound? We have two windows, liver window for right dome, spleen window for left dome. And this is the hyperechoic line is the diaphragm in this picture, but actually it looks like this is the diaphragmatic muscle, and these two hyperechoic layer are the one towards lung is pleura, the one towards liver or spleen is peritoneum. So this diaphragmatic muscle sandwiched between pleura and peritoneal layers. Diaphragm is mixed echogenicity. Most of the times it's hypoechoic with intermittent hyperechoic areas. These hyperechoic areas are because of lipid and fibrous tissue. So three layers, one is pleural, peritoneal, and in between there is diaphragmatic muscle. To assess the function of diaphragm, we need to look at thickness of the diaphragm and thickening of the diaphragm and excursion of the diaphragm. Excursion of diaphragm is the difference between end expiratory and end inspiratory levels. So this is amplitude of excursion. In case of deep breathing, the excursion will be higher, and in different parts of the diaphragm, excursion will be varied. It's more on lateral aspect of the diaphragm. So what are the different factors we need to assess we need to see to assess the function of the diaphragm? Thickness, thickening or thickening fraction, excursion. The different approaches to look at the diaphragm: intercostal, anterior subcostal, posterior subcostal, subxiphoid. And intercostal approach to assess the thickness of central tendon part. Anterior subcostal, posterior subcostal, we can see thickening fraction and amplitude or excursion. Subxiphoid, we can examine both the diaphragms or both the domes at the same time. So coming to intercostal approach, we keep high frequency probe, that is linear probe 7 to 18 megahertz in anterior axillary line. We need to choose either 7 to 8 or 8 to 9 intercostal space. In this area or on this window, we can find zone of opposition, that is the where diaphragm attaches to the ribs. And we can assess the diaphragmatic thickness, the distance between parietal to inner layer of parietal to inner layer of pleural layer. Coming to anterior subcostal, we need to use curvilinear probe, that is low frequency probe with 2 to 6 megahertz. We need to keep the probe in anterior axillary line, between anterior axillary and mid clavicular. In case of intercostal, we will keep around the anterior axillary line here. Between anterior axillary and mid clavicular line, need to face that probe towards medial, cranial and dorsally. And we can measure the excursion. We can activate M mode at a point on this visualized portion of the diaphragm, and we can look at the excursion and see the amplitude and velocity on the M mode. Posterior subcostal, it's just like anterior subcostal, but patient has to be in sitting position, may not always feasible, especially in the ICU patients. Subxiphoid, we need to use curvilinear low frequency probe and keep the probe transversely. Try to visualize both the diaphragms at the same time. So thickness is we look at the zone of opposition in the intercostal approach. End expiratory, you need to assess the thickness at end expiratory position of the diaphragm. Normal is 0.2 to 0.28 centimeters. In paralyzed diaphragm, 0.13 to 0.19 centimeters. So in case of atrophy, less than 0.2 centimeters. So if diaphragmatic thickness at the end expiratory position is less than 0.2 centimeters, we can consider it as atrophy or paralyzed. What is thickening fraction? Thickness at end of inspiration minus thickness at end of expiration divided by thickness at end of expiration. Normal is 28 to 96%. If it is less than 20%, paralysis. Excursion, it's a normal range of motion from resting expiratory position to full inspiratory position. So in among different waves, we need to choose the wave which has maximum amplitude. Normal 1.9 to 9 centimeters, and absence of this excursion or paradoxical motion signifies paralysis. Paradoxical motion means with inspiration diaphragm will move up instead of down. If it is less than 2.4 centimeters, it correlates 50% decrease in the vital capacity from the baseline, especially in case of post-operative patients. Consecutive assessment of the excursions is important to assess possible weaning failure, especially post-cardiac surgeries. If excursion is more than 2.5 centimeters, unlikely to have any diaphragmatic dysfunction. So the cutoff is 2.5 centimeters. More than 2.5, no diaphragmatic dysfunction. Less than 2.5 or less than 2.4, there is some amount of the diaphragmatic dysfunction with compromise in the vital capacity. And other modality, we need to compare right dome movement of or function of right dome with left dome. The maximal variation, the excursion is 0.5 to 2.5. The right to left ratio should be 0.5 to 2.5 in the quiet, 0.5 to 1.6 during deep breathing. So the normal variation or normal difference between right to left hemidiaphragm should be less than 50%. But the other modalities to assess the function of diaphragm, chest X-ray. In case of chest X-ray, if diaphragm is elevated, means we need to suspect the diaphragmatic dysfunction and go ahead with further evaluation. In other words, if the position of the diaphragm on chest X-ray normal means high likely, most of the times it will rule out the diaphragmatic dysfunction. Fluoroscopy, one of the gold standard technique to assess the diaphragmatic dysfunction, especially when there is unilateral paralysis. Assessment of bilateral diaphragmatic paralysis with fluoroscopy sometimes may lead to misinterpreted results, but it causes exposure of the patient to high dose radiation. With the help of fluoroscopy, we can assess the real-time movement of the diaphragm in all phases of the respiration, even patient is on the ventilator. Pulmonary functional test, there will be restrictive pattern, decrease in the total pulmonary, total lung capacity, vital capacity and functional residual capacity, but the diffusion function will be preserved, residual volume will be preserved, FE1 to FVC ratio will be preserved. All ultrasonic evaluation of diaphragm we have to do in the supine position. In case of sitting or slightly head up position, we may not get proper windows. So coming to pulmonary functional test, especially the pressure at various points, oral cavity, nose or ET tube, to know the inspiratory muscle strength, and stomach for abdominal pressure, esophagus for pleural pressure. So these two pressures to assess transdiaphragmatic pressure. So these are different pressures with the help of which we can assess the diaphragmatic dysfunction. Other modalities, phrenic nerve stimulation to know the any injury to the phrenic nerve, or phrenic nerve conduction studies, EMJ to know the problem with either in the at the level of phrenic nerve or at neuromuscular junction or at the level of the muscle. MRI is the one of the recent modality with the help of which we can assess the live or real-time movements of the diaphragm, and we can assess the function of the diaphragm. So to summarize, we have total 4 windows: intercostal, anterior subcostal, posterior subcostal, subxiphoid. Among all, anterior subcostal, intercostal, we can do in our day-to-day practice. We can assess thickness, thickening fraction and excursion. So we'll meet up soon with some other interesting topic.